we started establishing props, looking at the idea of actually using our set because we already established that really early on. We also started looking at costume and how that might work. I have looked at the idea and thought about the potentials for costume before. I've got two sheets of ideas, my initial ideas, and then my ideas that we decided on with Hannah. So, my initial ideas are kind of similar to the actual ideas that we went with, but there are some slight changes because my initial ideas were the rough sort of ideas that would show off what we wanted to show in the character, that might connotate to certain social groups or characteristics, and then we actually thought about with what we had, what we could use. So first of all, looking at like if we had unlimited capabilities and what intention we wanted to show, and then looking and refining down to what we actually had to our capability. So, costume and those ideas, we had the idea of a school uniform. We decided right from the beginning, I think all of the cast decided this, that we would all have a base uniform that all of the characters would wear, and this would show so many different things, but majority it will show how they all belong to one same unit, one same group, one same collective, to show how they're all in the same social group and they're all linked together into this idea of like the society and wider ideas. Shows how they're all the same within the same age group. It shows off that they're school students. It shows off that they have this vulnerability, this tendency. Sets the age group, sets the era as modern day with modern school uniforms. But mainly it's like this metaphorical sense of that they are all the same, yet unique in their own ways, and this uniqueness is changed by how they might have their tie to start off with. So we thought about like Leah, she would wear her tie sort of fairly straight. Adam probably wouldn't have his tie. Phil might not have a tie. Brian would probably have his tie in a really weird way, so might tie it on his head or tie it in some really odd way, I thought. And then Kathy would probably just have her tie normal as well. Richard would have a tie and he could be smart. And Jan and Mark, again with the ties, they'd probably have it loose or not really done properly. They're too cool for ties. So I thought about those ideas initially for the ties. We might change those due to capability of even being able to get ties because there aren't enough to share between the DNA groups. So we might have to resort to not using them, but we'll hopefully still be able to get the characters across. So my initial ideas were to have I'll start through and I'll go through each character. So Leah, some sort of scarf or a unique hairstyle or jacket to show how she is separate from. She tries hard to be separate from society's norms. She tries hard to stand out for Phil, but no one else really pays attention to it. So it could be something moderately stylish, moderately unique and different because she's trying to stand out and look nice. And we feel that as a character, she's a bit odd, but ultimately it's all about her aims to get Phil's attention. So I thought something like a scarf, a nice hairstyle, or a nice kind of jacket. For Adam, I thought potentially like a messy cap, obviously dirty face, blood on the forehead, a jacket dirty. He's been out with a night out, and that's when he gets pegged. Stones get pegged at him, and he ends up falling into this great thing. So into this hole. So he would be the only one potentially with no uniform on, and it depends if we wanted to keep the continuity of the idea of the metaphor or whether the idea of the sense should break that more, because if they've had like a night out, he's not going to be wearing a school shirt, whereas everybody else might because it's been a couple of weeks since they found him. Then Phil, we've got him with a lot of props in a plastic bag. We're thinking maybe a hoodie, something that can make him look sinister, but at the same time is kind of bland, so he can kind of hide away in some of the scenes when he's really not listening. You want to potentially have that idea of being able to mask himself and unmask himself with a hood, obviously we don't want a real mask. What I mean is metaphorically, in terms of him being able to hide his identity more with this hood, when he's doing his more sinister things like strangling Brian with the plastic bag, or especially when he's feeling not of sorts and is really separate from the situation during Richard's monologue. In terms of Brian, we've got messy hair, his shirt done up wrong, odd socks potentially. The idea that things are not right with him should be visually obvious as well. I think the balance we're going to have to get with this, though, is that it has to be odd, it has to be obvious to an audience because it's drama. And it's different when you're seeing things up close to when you're seeing them on stage, but we don't want to play it up too much so that it doesn't really make any sense in terms of like him like wearing totally weird clothing, because it just detracts from the fact that he has a little control over his actions sometimes because of the medication he's taking. Richard, I initially thought a tie and smart, but later on we changed this around to sort of fit with his character more, because we realised he's quite a fun guy towards the end, with a lot of energy, and that we give him a skateboard to play around with in terms of the props that I actually forgot to mention when we did the props. We gave him a skateboard to go on with and go off with, to sort of add in this character depth to his character, and it allows him to be more mobile, so that changes his costume a lot, that we later talked about with Hannah. And finally, Jan and Mark, I had the ties the same for both of them, a cap for one and something else cool for the other, plus they have phones, so they are definitely the more cool people of the group. Want the to be quite matching in what they wear, but also to be able to like bounce off each other in their style and things like that. Yeah. So that was my initial ideas for the character's costume. Then, once having a meeting with Hannah, we changed some ideas so that we felt that they were more capable of doing. So, starting with Jan and Mark, we had Mark wearing, this is if we had ties, we have ties in our actual piece, because likelihood is we probably won't, so I might leave out the tie idea because we probably won't be able to have them. But so we thought about him having a beanie or wearing a cap, most likely a beanie or no hat at all, just some sort of jacket potentially, sort of show that he's cool, that he's alternative. And Jan with a similar sort of denim jacket type thing. She looks a lot like Unique, in terms of like similar to him. Unique from the rest of the group, but those two are similar in terms of looking cool. Kathy, we thought about a loose unbuttoned shirt, and some sort of type of jewellery to make her look different. Her hair would probably be tied up. So this idea of her being the stylish popular girl, giving that stereotypical visual appeal. Phil, we had a hoodie and no shirt, which is what I initially talked about anyway. Brian, the wrong button shirt, potentially a tie on his head, but if we have ties, otherwise we'll just have the unbuttoned shirt, and like a messy hair and things like that. Leah, a messy ponytail, potentially a shirt. Everyone else is wearing black jeans, but Leah will wear blue jeans, and I think that's just like more of a metaphor in terms of everything else, because we wanted to try and make her more different and unique. But I think the whole idea of her having her bag and then we gave her glasses in the end, that's what made her more unique. So that was our new decision to do. Richard, we thought about him giving him a cap, potentially a tie, but not done properly if we have ties. We thought about the idea of having like joggers, but it just works better to keep things continuous and similar. And then finally, Adam, we decided more on black joggers and a white shirt, potentially with a checkered on top, and making it dirty and muddy with messy hair. potentially in a bun because I'll have to do it, and Blood and Bruises makeup, to add this aspect of this being beaten up after a night out, well, being, like because he fell down the grate. Um, and another point that we also wanted to make, something that we else would have thought about, was the idea of smoking, because we felt like it would have added this depth of them trying to be older than they should be, because they were at the age they're probably not allowed to smoke legally, and it would have added in this depth of even more like them trying to be grown up and deal with things, but it's not worked out how grown ups should really deal with it. Having them smoke, or pretending to smoke, obviously, would provide this sort of interesting layer, especially quite a lot of the characters we felt it would be a good use of characterization, and it might help them enhance this. But it gets to the point where it's like we've only got a couple more rehearsal periods to use, so therefore we couldn't really add this in at this later minute, so we decided against it. But it was definitely an interesting dynamic if we were to do this again, add in that we would have thought more in depth about finding unique costume and using smoking cigarettes as a way to bring out characterization more.